Let me start my presentation. Right, so the topic is about role of data science within the digital transformation, particularly in the public sector. Right, I was asked to speak about how data science possibly could be used in public, digital transformation project in the public sector. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give first provide some definition, because it's very important that everybody understand the concept of the data science and particularly what the big data means, right? And then I talk about what the digital transformation means and how actually the big data can be used within those projects. And I also outline some of the challenges, and I probably, if we get time, I'll probably explain a little bit about the work we're doing on big data at Sheffeld, Hallam University, right? Okay, so let's start with the definition. Data science is a combination of different disciplines, right? The computing come into that one, some element of mathematics, the programming, and so forth. So that's what we call the kind of the data science area. And within the data science, there are a wide range of kind of disciplines, right? And particularly what is now becoming very popular right now is big data and machine learning, right? Because these two technologies together going to make a big impact in industry and beyond that as well. All industries, I suppose, right? But today I'm going to talk more about the public sector kind of application, right? So what I want to do first, I want to make sure everybody absolutely understand what big data means, right? How many of you heard about the big data before? Yeah? Okay, right. So let me take a very simple example to explain. The big data doesn't mean it's just large volume of data, because some people think it's just large volumes of data. It's not that. It's a bit beyond that. So I'll take this particular example. So you can see there's a hospital. I have two scenarios. One is a traditional hospital. Other one is a modern hospital like what you got at the KDU, right? In a traditional hospital, what happened is you can see the patient is on the bed. The doctor come in and look at the patient record, which is a paper-based one. Yeah. Look at the record, write something, prescribe the medicine and write it down again. Yeah, something like that. Nurses come time to time and take various readings. It could be blood pressure or it could be temperature, things like that. And at the end, what happens quite often in some hospitals, not always, they say, okay, what is your experience in the hospital? So they give you a form to fill in. Yes? Okay. Now if you look at that scenario, actually the volume of data is very small. Yeah? And also, data come in at a very low speed because it happens only a few times a day, right? If you look at a modern hospital, the scenario is entirely different because, as you can see here, we have the electronic records now. So I do a lot of work with the local hospital, and one of the projects I'm doing at the moment is Sheffeld Children's Hospital. And all the clinicians, that means doctors, the consultant, and including the nurses, they all have an iPad. Yeah? So when they see a patient, what they do, put the patient ID, they have the medical history of that patient in front of them. Yeah? Okay, so that's large volumes of data now. And then we have the real-time monitoring. Yeah? So the data come in all the time. We are not taking the readings only particular time of the day. You actually gathering the data all the time. So the data come in very fast. Now, what happened is everybody got mobile phones, right? So if you are not very happy staying in the hospital, what do you put a message on your Facebook, or you send a Twitter message, or you send a WhatsApp message, or you talk to your friends and say never come to this hospital, things like that. Yeah? Okay? So you can see now in modern systems we have large volume of data coming very fast. So if I take that further, right? So you can see there's a high volumes of data, right? The velocity is high now because the data coming very, very fast, particularly from the real data system and also from social media. Because the social media actually generate very large volume of data very, very quickly, right? And now we have a challenge because in traditional system we have the structured data, right? Now we go deal with unstructured or semi-structured data, things like images, recording, text messages, yeah, and so forth, yeah. So we got a combination of data and we got a high variety. And to make it a bit more complicated, particularly in social media kind of situations, We don't know what we see is right or wrong, right? Because people do make fake news, fake stories, yeah? And also, even in the real-time data collection system, the sensor may be faulty. If the sensor is faulty, you actually recording the wrong data, and you might take wrong actions, yeah? So if you put all these things together, right, those 4 V's, the volume, the variety, the velocity, and the and that collectively called big data. That's what you've got to remember. It's not just large volume of data. Right, now other technology is the machine learning, because I need to mention this very quickly. Traditionally what happened when you write a program, you write the program, feed that in the computer, you put the data in, and the computer gives output. Right, that is a traditional program. Whereas in machine learning, it's different. You give input and output data set to the computer, and the computer generates the logic. That's meaning the computer can actually learn itself. Yeah, it's come up with the logic. That's what we call the machine learning. So these two technologies together can do some marvelous things. Okay, let's see what we can do with this data. Now, typically, what we do the analysis, we collect data and see what happened in the past. Right? And the classic example is a financial year. Right? We have a financial year. At the end of the financial year, what we do, we see what happened in the last 12 months. Yeah? Okay. Sometimes we go a little bit deeper and say why something happened. So we go trying to find out why this particular problem occurred and things like that. Yeah? So that's all about the history, the past. Right? But what will be really interesting is actually see whether we can predict, whether we can actually forecast, whether we can see the future, right? And that is to say what's going to happen, right? Not only that, if you go further, we can say actually whether we can optimize the performance of the system in future, right? And beyond that, it can be things like, for example, what we call the adaptive system, whereby the system can learn itself, right? An optimal system, and it can learn as well itself. And to do that, that's where the big data comes in. So the big data and the machine learning together can help to operate in that area, the right-hand side of that line. Okay. So when you say big data, it's not about the past, it's about the future. That's the difference. That is absolutely essential, right? Okay. So digital transformation. Right? And digital transformation is about, not all about computing, it's about the various kind of technologies. You take processes together, you take people in the picture as well. So, particularly in the public sector, right, there are 4 areas where the digital transformation is taking place. One is knowledge sharing. That means the government holds a lot of information and they want to share that information with the public. So like a website, simple website is a way to share information. It could be public engagement, like the surveys, right? You ask people opinion about certain topics, yeah? And digital services mean, like in here now, I know driving licenses here now is digitized now, I think you can apply online, yeah? Okay, so things like that, that's the digital service. And the other aspect is what we call the smart cities, right? That, for example, say we can have a better control of traffic in cities and so forth. So all these things are, in all these areas, actually we use kind of digital technologies. Now, this is the digital transformation project took place in the UK. Actually, it became the top implementation in the world in 2016, right? So you can see there, welcome to government UK, right? And all the digital services that the UK government provide, right? So for example, I can apply my passport online, I apply for driving license, and there are all kind of things online. They are connected, seamless, right? And what is really interesting is it's a very consistent user interface, right? When you move from one application to another application, you still think that you are in the same place, right? That's a real beauty, not fragmented, right? So that's a lot of countries have used this as a kind of framework for their own developments, right? So where the big data comes in then? Because when we have this digital projects or digital applications, right? They generate a lot of data, right? Yeah, they generate a lot of data. Then what we can do is and see how we can actually use that data actually to improve the services. That's the point of, that's the role of big data. Okay, right. So I got few examples. I think this is. I think I'll probably skip this one because this is not that exciting, I suppose, right? I'll give you because this is about the fraud detection, right? The fraud means people who do not pay taxes, for example, say, yeah? And there's a setup and they collect large volumes of data and they can actually identify actually where these things happen. So say somebody living in here is not paying the tax, council tax. Right, so they can visualize, and this is how they actually develop what they call the fraud network. They look at all the activities, they get the real-time data. Sometimes they get data from various kind of sources, pull them together, and say somebody is actually committing almost like a crime. Yeah, so they can actually find who those people are. So that's one interesting application. Now, this is much more interesting to me, right? This is real application. You can see this actually, there's a website, you can go into that one and you can use the system as well. And the Metropolitan Police now use big data techniques to predict, right? Remember, I use the word predict many times now, right? To predict when a crime can take place, right? When there are going to be a trouble, when we are going to have a kind of a trouble in London, particularly in London, right? So what they do is once they predict, if the system say there are going to be some problem in some part of London, in 2 weeks time, what they do actually they send more police cars into that area in that period. So they try to avoid it. Yeah. So this is actually in use. So this is not fantasy. This is happening, right? Okay. So it's all about future. So this is how it works, right? They collect various kind of data, right? Analyze the data, and then have this what they call the predictive engine. And then once they identify the hotspot, and they say, oh yeah, there are going to be a problem in next week, and then they obviously station more police officers in that area well in advance. Yeah, so they can actually cut down the crime, right? Americans doing the same thing as well. And not only the areas, then also sometimes they target those who commit crime, and also they try to identify who the potential victims going to be as well, right? And then try to support them. So it's a very powerful tool in that sense, right? Okay, this is another example. This is in the public sector kind of application. And here you can see there are models where they use predictive analytics, and they collect a lot of data about travel patterns of the people, GP trackers, various other data, and they got this model. And using this one, they actually have done a lot of things, infrastructure changes, new transportation systems, and things like that. Yeah, so that's a very interesting application. I'll probably skip that. And this is not in the UK, and this is in, as you can see, Boston Children's Hospital, that they collect data, real-time basis from various sources. In here you can see there are various sources. They gather this data, and they actually predict where certain diseases might break out. Yeah, so they can involve countries well in advance, something that's going to come through, yeah, because that's using the big data kind of analysis. And this is another interesting one. This is from South Korea. And you know, people obviously on weekends they go for drinking and things like the sports and so forth. People out there in the night in the town, right? And they need safe transportation back home, right? Now obviously they have a bus service, night bus service. Now as you know, the bus service always has a specific beginning and a specific end and a fixed route. Yeah, so you go from A to B. So if you're going from say Galkis to Piliandal, you know exactly what the route is. Yeah, well, how this system works is they monitor mobile calls, they monitor the location of taxis, and they monitor various other information. They dynamically change the route of the bus service so that they can get the passengers out safely and quickly to their homes, right? So that is using big data. Yeah, big data analytics. So it's a very, very powerful kind of platform. So there are challenges, right? The challenges are, right, because obviously people are quite reluctant to change sometimes. Yeah, and I think particularly to me, I think the big challenge is having the consistency, right? Because I see in some application in different part of the world, right? And you go from one application to another application, it will have entirely different kind of interfaces. That causes all kind of problems. So it's very important that when you implementing the digital transformation kind of projects to have the consistent kind of approach, right? I'm not going to talk about this, right? But what I want to do is I want to go to the final words because I saw the green card. I don't have a right hand card. Yeah, and right. The final words, right? There's something else coming through now, right? I just want to mention this. Big data is a very little part of a big thing called Industry 4.0, right? And there are a lot of other digital technologies coming through. So if you are interested, please read about Industry 4.0. And because you can see the big data analytics is one element, and there are a lot of other technologies are now coming together. And it is not only for the manufacturing kind of application, it is actually for the government application as well. So it's and there's a big move now to use this Industry 4.0 platform for various kind of industries. Okay? Right. Now, I like films. Anybody seen this film, Minority Report? Anybody? Right, 2, 3, 4 people. Right. This is now nearly about 15 to 20 years old, I think, if I remember correctly. Right, when Tom Cruise was very young. And that film was about big data. But those days, nobody said that, nobody even knew the word big data. Right, the word big data was not there. Right, and it's about actually capturing criminals before they commit crime. Right, so if you are not watch the film, when you go home today, find it and watch it. Right, okay, it's very, very interesting, and you can see how big data is now used. Same technology now used by police forces, right? And I did mention about Industry 4.0, right? And this is my most favorite film, Iron Man. Okay? Now, you may wonder why Iron Man? How many of you seen Iron Man? Right, or more people seen Iron Man, I'm happy. Right, so Iron Man, because it used all kind of technologies, actually, digital technologies, right? Now, when you watch the film, you think, oh my God, this is fantasy, right? This is not in the real world. Believe me, all these technologies are real. They are being now used, yeah? Okay, and I put this slide, just one more slide, yeah? And you can see here, this guy has a, without big data analytics, right? Companies are blind and deaf. That's true. Now the next slide, anybody under 18 here by any chance? No? Okay, so I'm not going to say anything, you better read it. Thank you very much.